أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our viewers once again. Joining me on Youth Matters on Hidayat TV with your host, Sakina Habib. Thank you for joining in on today's episode once again. As you know that we are continuing with our series, Muharram series that we are having with our very highly esteemed Sheikh, Sheikh Dr. Mehdi Hazari. Inshallah, today we'll be talking about the level of taqwa that one should have in our daily lives and how can we achieve that pinnacle of taqwa and of iman and piety in our lives. As you know that the kind of sacrifices that we see in Karbala are very unique and each carry a deep lesson within for us, the ummah, to learn lessons from it. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is not just a symbol of sacrifice, but actually he is a necessity who represented kindness, mercy, friendship, compassion, diversity, unity, brotherhood, honor, respect, bravery, forgiveness, and so much more. And then we also see Lady Zainab Salamullahi alayha showing us the strength that a woman can hold and who can actually bring changes in the history of Karbala and in the lives of many people. So inshallah, in today's discussion, we will be talking about piety and modesty. Without much further ado, I would like to welcome our esteemed Sheikh, Sheikh Dr. Mehdi Hazari, joining us from the USA. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again, Sheikh, and thank you for joining me on Youth Matters.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Sakina. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor.
Jazakallah, Sheikh. First and foremost, I would like to know from you, how are the days of Azadari going on for you so far?
They're very blessed, and they remind us of how much we need the Ahl al-Bayt and how indebted we are to the sacrifices they made. Alhamdulillah, may Allah make us of the true followers of Al-Hussein alayhi salam.
Ameen, inshallah. Sheikh, when we see the history of Karbala and when we see some of the events that are encountered, we see the essence of piety, taqwa at its peak. And so the question today arises that what does it take to progress from Islam to Iman to that highest stage of taqwa?
Yes, so the Holy Quran states, I'm sure the audience and the listeners all know the ayah that says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O you who believe, have piety in God, be pious the way it is befitting of His position, and don't die except that you are in submission. This beautiful verse uses the word Islam, Iman, and Taqwa all together. And it exemplifies for us the fact that there is a progression. And I always give this strange example that, you know, if you have a dartboard, the outer circle is basically what you might consider to be all of Muslims, all Muslims. And yet when you move inside to the inner circles, that's where you have mu'min. Not every Muslim is a mu'min, fortunately. And then when you move inward, even towards the bullseye, you get to the muttaqi. You go from Muslim to mu'min to muttaqi, closer inward. And there are levels inside of that as you get to the bullseye. Now, which one is the hardest to hit? Well, the one that is closest to the middle is the one that is hardest to hit. And there are fewer, it is a much smaller dot, which means there are fewer people who are there. There are fewer people who are truly, truly at the highest levels of taqwa. highest levels of yaqeen that we can find. And so the question is, how do we get there? And how do we progress so that we increase? Well, for us, to some degree, Sister Sakina, we are going to go up and down. We're not always going to
Mm-hmm.
move in a forward direction, unfortunately, because there are moments when you
Yes.
move forward, and God forbid, there are moments when maybe you experience some slowdown. God forbid you move backwards even half a step. Maybe at a moment you have
Right.
like a minute of doubt or despair, God forbid, that pushes you backward. The key is that you move forward more than, God forbid, you move back, or that you try to
Right.
move forward on a more regular basis than remaining in the status quo. How that happens is by two things: ensuring that you adhere to the requirements of religion, the obligations of religion, and most importantly, stay away from haram. Taqwa is al-war'u an maharim Allah. It means to stay away from those things God has prohibited. And indeed, it is doing the prohibited things that moves us away from piety.
Sheikh, can you explain us what is the meaning of inner khudu' and outer khushu' when it comes to piety?
Yes, yes. So that is a great question, and it's an important thing to recognize. So when you are talking about insan, insan has a zahir and insan has a batin. And
Batan.
there's a verse of the Holy Quran that says, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ. Make sure that you stay away from apparent outward sins and also stay away from the inner sins, inside sins. Sins that
Yeah.
you're not doing in terms of action or apparentness in front of people, but maybe you are harboring something that is sinful inside of you. And that also Islam is saying to stay away from. So that's why when you talk about khushu' and khudu', you're talking about fear of God, lowering yourself in front of God. You are talking about the outer body, khudu', the parts of the body, your arms, your legs, your physical body, and khushu', which is your heart, the inside part of it, that is lowering itself down. Both of these must come down. The outer body and the inner self must come down in front of Allah in lowliness and humility if we are truly going to be pious. That means that not only in our actions are we humble and fearful of God, physically, whatever we're
Mm-hmm.
doing, in the moments in which we are sitting motionless, maybe on the musalla, maybe just sitting on an armchair, maybe at the desk when you're at school or at work, that just in that moment of stillness, there is no negativity, there is nothing against God's religion or God's way or bad thought towards anyone that is running through your mind. Because that is the part that
Right.
escapes us. We physically may not be doing anything bad, but inside sometimes we don't control it. That's why khushu' and khudu' at the same time.
Indeed, you've really explained that very well because sometimes what something seems on the outward is not the reality of someone on the inside. As in, someone can probably pretend that they pray 5 times a day or even more, and sometimes they can, they are fasting and all of that, and we think that okay, this person is very pious, but then we don't know sometimes that there are things that they are doing probably behind the doors that we are not aware about. So I hope that inshallah may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq that we can work on our damir, on our nafs, so that we can have the balance of both the innerness and the outwardness, as you said, the khudu' and the khushu', and we can keep it at a balance, inshallah. Sheikh, could you tell us what are some of the things, some of the, you can say, factors that can damage a believer, damage a believer's personality or character?
Yes, these are the things that are in the same manner apparent. You can see them, they're close to your face, they're visible, they're perceptible, you can sense them. And they are also those things that are hidden away from your eyes, which are insidious, which are subtle, but probably to some degree more damaging to us. And to be able to recognize those things is really the key to being a mu'min. It can be anything as simple as eating something that is haram, engaging in actions that are haram, those things that will take you overtly away from the path of God. But in the same token, finding that there are negativities inside of you, and these are the things that we have to address very deeply. And that's why you see that all of our imams would sit and they would contemplate on themselves, and they would uh, basically scold their own nafs. When they were perfect and pure and infallible, they would still scold their own nafs. Why? Because they knew that no matter what they did, it was not sufficient for Allah to glorify
Yeah.
God or to praise God, even though they were perfection. But this is to teach us and to remind us that don't be a friend to your own nafs. Don't be somebody who coddles your nafs. Be of those people who scolds your nafs and treats it somewhat with discipline and sternness and firmness. Why? Because even a little bit of negativity inside of you, bad thoughts, entertaining ideas that you say, well, I'm just thinking about it, I'm not really doing anything, it can open the door to something worse. And that is what we have to consider when it comes to our piety.
Inshallah, definitely. Also, we have like a couple of questions, two questions actually from the youths. So, when it comes to piety, when does the intake of halal affect one's piety?
Of course,
Haram
of
food,
course.
sorry, haram food. Yeah, sorry,
Yes, of
the intake
course,
of
halal
haram
and
food.
haram. Of
Yeah,
course, of course. So why is that? Why does it happen? So let's say I go and I eat a hamburger that is being cooked in a halal establishment with dhabiha meat, versus I go eat the same type of burger from an establishment that does not have halal dhabiha meat in it. Will they do anything to me physically? No, they're not going to harm me physically. I'm not going to get sick from eating the unhalal or the biha meat, assuming that it's cooked properly and it is of good quality. But why
yeah.
does that affect me? Because of my mindset, because of my psyche, because I went and purposefully, out of obedience to God, adherence to His religion, I ate the halal meat. It has created inside of me emotion, a wheel that is constantly turning, that is constantly aware. And because I have consciously stayed away from the haram meat, I have allowed myself to be conscious of not only that meat, but also anything else that may potentially come to me. When you are blind to those things that are haram, or you ignore and are heedless to those things that are haram, what does it do? It snowballs. It gets bigger and bigger and
Right.
bigger, such that other
Yeah.
haram things that to you, you are more heedless to them, and you are more likely not to pay attention, and you will consume them without realizing. That's why it affects you. Physically, it may not do anything to you, but spiritually, it will create that motion in you, that wheel that is turning, that is trying to get to Allah. It will throw a wrench in it. It will throw something that will cause it to stop.
Very well said, and I hope that the youth can learn from this, 'cause since they had asked this question, some of them. So, one last question, and inshallah, then we'll be wrapping up today's episode. So, the next question is that sometimes, for instance, in the West, usually, it's to do with hijab, that some girls or some ladies want to do hijab, but because of the society and because of the trend or because of the circle that they are in, they are discouraged. And taking into account the situations of Islamophobia sometimes in the West, sort of creates that fear. So, how can they tackle in such situations to maintain their piety?
Yes, so I sometimes hesitate and feel shy to answer these types of questions, and I'll tell you why. Because as a man, it is a strange circumstance that I should be the one telling a woman how she should cover her head or not. So I can address it from this sense that you, as a human being, just like me as a human being, a woman, a man, are, like I said yesterday, responsible to God. Your worth is from God, and you will answer to Allah. You will not answer to anyone other than Allah. If you keep
Very
that
true.
first and foremost in your mind, then that is what should propel you to fulfilling his obligation. When we do things for other people, sheerly, and we try to please other people by doing religious things, eventually what will happen? You will become annoyed by that fact. You will
You're
feel
right.
disillusioned because you're doing it for another human being, and eventually you'll feel like, why am I doing this for this person? They don't appreciate it. Whereas if you do it for Allah, you say, I'm responsible to Allah, not to society, not to this person, not to that person. I'm responsible to Allah. That will drive you towards fulfilling that responsibility. You will be responsible and accountable only to Him. That will push you forward. And I will say this, that we should always strive to fulfill the obligations that God has put on us and do so in a manner that is complete and the way He has prescribed for us to do. If there is difficulty in this, if there is challenge in this, we must again sit down and figure out why. In the same case as a woman wearing a hijab and facing difficulty in society, if that difficulty is so bad that her life is in danger, God forbid, then obviously the rules will dictate what she can and cannot do, and that she must preserve her own safety and well being. In the same manner, for a man, we feel hesitant about shaking the hands of a woman in public when we are working in a professional environment. And we think to ourselves that if we don't do so, it will harm us professionally. We will lose our job or it will make us look bad. But really, in all
Yeah.
honesty, and that's the question we have to ask. We have to determine the scope and the amount of danger, negativity, or what is called haraj, difficulty upon us, and determine, is it surmountable? And then honestly answer, honestly, sincerely, with absolute candor with ourselves, answer, can I surmount this difficulty so I can fulfill my obligation to God, not to anybody else, but to Allah?
Thank you so much, Sheikhna. I really appreciate you joining on Youth Matters, and thank you for sharing your very precious pearls of wisdom with us. Jazakallahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our amals in these holy nights, inshallah. And may the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, accept our amals as well and be pleased with us, inshallah. Thank you, Sheikh, and inshallah we'll be catching you tomorrow once again on another new topic to discuss with us on this program. Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you, Sister Sakina. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for joining us today once again, and I hope that all of you benefited with today's lesson. Inshallah, catch us tomorrow once again at 8:30 a.m. only on Hidayat TV. And if you would like to add any points or any feedbacks or any questions that you would like to ask Dr. Sheikh Hazari, then please do let us know in the comment section, or you can DM me on Sakina Habib on Instagram, and you can even DM Dr. Sheikh Hazari on Instagram. So please do let us know about our episodes and if you would like to add anything. Thank you so much. Jazakumullahu khairan.